Have you ever really thought about the road beneath your wheels? I mean, we just take it for granted, right? We can hop in a car and get almost anywhere. But that simple act is actually the end result of a 200-year-long battle, a fight against mud, mountains, and time itself. So let's dive into this incredible story of how the modern road was born. Okay, I want you to imagine something. Picture yourself as a traveler back in the year 1692. Your mission is to get from Paris to Dijon. That's about 350 kilometers. You get your things together, you board a carriage, and you just, settle in for a long, long trip. Any guesses how long? 8 full days. Think about that. That's an average speed of just 2 kilometers an hour. You could walk faster. The roads were so awful that travel was just this grueling, bone-jarring, miserable ordeal. All right, now let's hit the fast-forward button. We're jumping ahead about 140 years to 1831. It's the same journey, Paris to Dijon, but by now, making this trip was seen as this peak of modern travel, a really incredible achievement. So, just how much faster are we talking? 2 days. Wow. The travel time was slashed by 75%. The speed had more than quadrupled. And this wasn't just a minor improvement. This was a total revolution. It changed everything. Commerce, politics, even the very idea of what a nation could be. So that's the big question, right? How did they do it? How did France manage to transform this medieval maze of muddy, impassable tracks into the fastest transportation network anywhere in the world? Well, the answer really comes in 3 parts: brute force, brilliant minds, and some radical reinvention. The first huge leap forward wasn't about some fancy new technology. Nope. It was all about raw power and a single, centralized vision, all driven by the absolute monarchy of Louis XIV. So before the 1680s, fixing roads was just this chaotic local mess. But the king's top minister, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, he had this totally revolutionary idea. He basically said, stop all these tiny scattered projects. We're going to focus all of our power on rebuilding the grand chemins, the great highways, one by one, connecting Paris to all the vital parts of the kingdom. And believe me, this was desperately needed. The writer Madame de Sévigné wasn't kidding around when she wrote this in 1680. The roads were literally death traps, completely impossible for huge chunks of the year. Colbert's plan was radical, for sure, but it was born out of total necessity. So how do you build these massive new roads without a modern government budget? Well, the state used a brutal but really effective tool called the corvée. This meant that for weeks at a time, peasants were literally forced to abandon their own farms to do backbreaking, completely unpaid labor for the king. It was this incredible human sacrifice that laid the very first stones of the modern network. But, brute force will only get you so far. The next great revolution wasn't physical, it was intellectual. This was the moment that France turned road building from a crude, rough craft into a precise science. This timeline right here, it shows the key steps. In just over 100 years, France completely professionalized the whole field. It created a national corps of civil engineers, it founded the world's very first engineering school to train them, and it built this culture of scientific innovation that would change how roads were built forever. Now, this is what I find so interesting. It shows a huge shift in thinking. The old way was just brute force. Pile up a massive half-meter thick layer of stone and hope for the best. But engineers like Trezeguet figured out that the real enemy wasn't the weight of the carriages, it was water. His new method, which was later perfected by a Scotsman named John McAdam, was half as thick. It used a clever, vaulted foundation and a curved surface to get water to drain away. It was smarter, it was cheaper, and it was so much more durable. So by the 1830s, France has the most advanced road network on the entire planet. It really seems like the race is won. And then, a completely new technology arrives that threatens to make the whole thing obsolete overnight. The steam locomotive. I mean, just look at these numbers from 1855. Even the fastest mail coach, absolutely flying down a perfect macadam road, was basically crawling compared to the train. The railway was nearly 3 times faster. It was an absolute game changer. Honestly, it must have seemed like the age of the road was over before it had even really begun. Why would you spend a fortune building these amazing highways when the future was so clearly on rails? But here's the thing. The road didn't die. It adapted. It pivoted. Sure, long-distance travel shifted to the railway, but that just created a new, vital role for the road, connecting everything to the railway. Suddenly, a fever for building local feeder roads just exploded across the country, which made the whole network denser and more valuable than ever before. So the road survived its first existential crisis. But the next invention wouldn't just make sure it survived, it would launch it into the 20th century and redefine its purpose for good. You know, at first, the automobile was a complete disaster for those beautiful macadam roads. See, the surface was made of all these compacted, loose stones. The suction from fast-spinning rubber tires literally tore the surface apart, kicking up these blinding, choking clouds of dust and destroying the road itself. But the potential of the automobile was just undeniable. This chart just shows you how quickly it blew past everything else. By 1899, an electric car had already broken the 100-kilometer-per-hour barrier. The road was once again home to the fastest vehicles on Earth, and it urgently needed an upgrade to keep up. And the solution was actually surprisingly simple. It involved using a sticky industrial byproduct, tar. The process, called goudronnage, was basically spraying hot tar over the macadam surface. It acted like a glue, binding all those loose stones together, which killed the dust problem and created the smooth, durable surface that we all recognize today as modern pavement. So here's the key takeaway. The road beneath our feet isn't just this static, boring thing. It's a technology. And it's a technology that has constantly evolved to meet new challenges, from a king's will to the genius of engineers and the disruption of brand new inventions, which, of course, makes you wonder, what comes next?